My brothers, my sisters, it is your man, the Duke, host of the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast. And I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to www.strictlyfortheculture.ca. Strictly for the Culture is one of the hottest brands in sports and entertainment today. Come on, you've seen the t-shirts, you've seen the hoodies on folks like Rodney Mack, the Reverend Ron Hunt, Jeremy Prophet, MLW World Champion Alex Kane, Mr. PWI 500, Jay Bougie, even your man, the Duke, and a lot of other podcasters and influencers. So I'll say it once again, www.strictlyfortheculture.ca. Do it for the love, do it for the respect, do it for the honor, but most of all, do it strictly for the culture.
Locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke Loves Rasslin.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hey folks, this is James Beard, Hall of Fame referee, and you're listening to Duke Loves Rasslin.
Close enough. See,
all right.
I can't deal with you Yankees. All right, you guys don't want to go with the Southern way. I get it.
Oh God.
Brothers and sisters, you know James Beard is legitimately one of our beloved guests. Every time he's been on the show through the years, and he's an original guest. He was on Duke Loves Rasslin from year one, and now we're going into our 8th year. Just really a special person, and has been a major part of the growth of this show, not just from being on personally, but also for lending his support and being someone that other people are like, okay, well, if James did your show, I'll do your show. And I'll tell you, James, that is probably the biggest compliment that I could ever get. Just the fact that you have leveraged your reputation and your respect in the wrestling industry and have lended a little shine to, a fan with a podcast like me. I really appreciate and dare I say love you for it, man. It's really special.
I appreciate that, Duke, and the love is returned, my friend, and I'm proud to be a part of it. It's a great service that you do, and I know the love you have for our business, and that means a lot to me, and that's why I support this and why I support you, and we've talked on and off the air, so it's not just an on the air thing too. So it's a good relationship, and I'm proud of it.
It sure is, and I thank you for that, James, seriously, because it's funny. One of the best things that anyone's ever done, you shared some of your music with me, James.
Yeah.
You forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I did. Yeah. That's I don't share that a lot with a lot of folks, but that's part of that's because I'm technically an idiot, but yeah, that's part of my life, that I'm very proud of. That's a passion that I've had since I was just a very, very small kid, and something I still continue to do a little bit in. So it's music's a big part of my life.
Well, you got a pretty good singing voice there, James.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
You might have missed your calling. You should have been on the Opry or something there, brother.
Well, I thought I was headed that way, and wrestling got in the way.
Yeah, that's so be it, right? You got bit by the bug, and that was it. Yeah,
that's it. Well, yeah, the bug, and somebody flashed a couple of opportunities in front of me I couldn't turn down, and then there I go.
How many years now, James? How many years you been in the industry?
37, 38, something like that.
If I would have told you 38 years ago, let's even say 37 years ago. So let's say you're just about 1 year in the business. Mm-hmm. And I would have said to you, hey, James, give it another, 36 years or so, and you're going to be even bigger than you have ever been. And that's after Hall of Fames. That's after JBL putting you in his book. That's after the run with the NWA. That's after all of these other accolades. That's after Japan and writing the book of the wrestling moves so the Japanese wrestlers can learn how to call a match in English. After all, Global Wrestling Federation and being on television all over the world and on ESPN. After all of these things that you've accomplished, your best days are going to be literally years and years down the line. If I would have said that to you, what would you say?
It would have been kind of hard to believe, you know, and when I look back on all those things and you know, I have been blessed. I really have. It's been a great ride. I've had a lot of great experiences. And you know, a lot of the honors and things have come in the last 10 years or so. And I thought that was, you know, 10 years ago when I wrote that book, I thought I was kind of almost done. And some of the best things that's happened to me have happened to me in the last 10 years. And it's just incredible, you know, all I can say is I've been blessed.
It's kind of crazy to say that because you kind of think to yourself, well, damn, do I need to write another book?
Well, actually I am.
There it is.
Yeah, it's and I've told people this, but I kept telling them this for the last 2 or 3 years. I've had this book almost finished, and I have actually. In fact, I have finished it, and then I started rewriting some things. But there will be a book out before this year is over with, for sure.
I love that. I love that because what better way to round the next book out than to talk about the fact that you are now a movie star.
Well, you know, star may be a little bit extreme, but actually, yes, being a part of a movie has been that's just an amazing experience and something I think we all kind of dream about that at some point in our time. You know, we think, you know, I'd love to be in the movies or something like that. And I admit that those things have crossed my mind over the years and that kind of thing. But to actually have it happen is it's just mind-boggling.
Folks, the name of the movie is Iron Claw, and it is the story of the Von Erich family.
Right.
And it's interesting because obviously you have your amateur wrestling historians and fans and what have you who, well, they didn't get this right, and so-and-so's not tall enough, and that one didn't look like that, and his nose isn't right, and all this other nonsense, which good for you, all of the nerds out there. And listen, I'm a nerd myself, so I get it. But good for you on your wanting everything to be historically the way that you remember it. But I will say this. Far and wide, overall, even the critics who take issue with certain little details that they wish would have been slightly different, overall, the reception for Iron Claw has been overwhelmingly positive. Like, people really feel this was a great, not a good, but a great movie. How does that feel?
That feels it's really satisfying. It's something I hoped would come with this movie. I kind of had faith that it would because I could see the care that was gone into and the quality of production that was occurring during the making of it and the time it took to get things right. I'm talking about the wrestling part, which is what I was involved in. I was hoping that it would be well received, and it's been as good as I ever hoped for. I mean, the reviews for the most part have been very, very positive, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of being a part of it. I think Sharon Durkin did an incredible job of writing the script and directing the movie and allowing the story to be as realistic as it could be and the wrestling to be as realistic as it could be. I'm just really proud of being a part of that.
I got to ask you, James, were you the right guy to fill the roles that you fill? Because like you said, you made sure that the wrestling part was as good as it can be in those circumstances, what have you, and you actually ended up on screen on top of it. Well, were you the right guy?
Well, it wasn't much of a stretch for me, to be honest with you.
I was hoping you were picking up where I was laying down.
Yeah. I can't take any credit for the quality of the actors wrestling, although I was shocked at how well they performed those spots and things. Chavo Guerrero was the director of wrestling, and he put Sean's version of things into action. And when I got there, my contribution was mainly kind of helping guide the guys into doing the things that they did in the ring the way the guys actually did them in the ring, because I'd had that experience with them, and it was very rewarding to see how they took to that and how willingly they were to take the advice and put that advice into action. And it was these guys, these actors were unbelievably adept at doing the wrestling. When you see the wrestling scenes in the movie, that's those guys doing it. It's not some guy coming in and taking their place when the bump comes. They're going all the way through with it, and the whole spot is all the actors. And I thought they did a magnificent job of it.
Being a guy that is, you're a Texas guy, and you are a referee in Texas. You were down in that territory. You got to experience a lot of what was in the movie. You were there.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's really what my role was, outside of actually being in the movie, is to try to convey some of that to those guys.
Did they do it?
Absolutely. They nailed it as well as anybody could nail it. Zach was unbelievable to work with. He wanted to bring the essence of Kevin to the ring, and I think he did that. Kevin was a very aggressive guy, and that was just his style. And when I first got there, we started shooting some things or going over some scenes and stuff, and he was a little hesitant to jump in the middle of things. And I talked to him about it, and I said, look, that one scene where they rushed the ring with the Freebirds, there was some more stuff that we cut, that after they got into the ring, the Freebirds are outside the ring and they have this back and forth thing and all. And Zach was kind of backing off a little bit, and I said, Zach, Kevin would have run over me to get to those guys. That's how aggressive he was. And that's the attitude he took from that point on. It is that he tried to get that part of Kevin across. And I think he did a great job of it, but every time I'd tell him something like that, and all those guys are that way. All the actors that portrayed wrestlers in those scenes, when we would give them suggestions, they'd jump right on it. They weren't acting like a bunch of prima donna actors who thought that they were above all that. They were actually respecting what we knew and how we knew it had to be done, and tried to do it to their best ability. And I think for the most part, they got it really right.
Again, you are somebody who 37, 38 years you spent in pro wrestling, referee, executive, mentor, trainer, you name it. You've done it all, man. I often ask people on the show, what advice do you have for the younger generation or people who are trying to break into the business or whatever? But I'm gonna tailor this to you slightly differently, James.
Okay.
Because and I've seen this with even my mom. 36 years she was a law enforcement officer, right?
Right.
She's seen it all, man. Different generation. She started off in the early 80s, just like you. And then she retired a couple years ago. That's a lot of knowledge. That's a lot of change. That's a lot of adjusting, lessons learned, incredible amount, a wealth of knowledge developed there, just like you. For anybody out there who has spent a lot of time in any industry and, maybe they're retired or they're just not out there as much as they used to be and what have you. For a guy who has managed to be bigger today than he ever was yesterday. Do you have any advice for folks like that?
Oh, wow. It's really hard to relate it that way sometimes, because you're right. Things have changed so much in the last 3-4 decades. And I'm sure your mother would say the same thing, in her job, that change sometimes is very good. There's a lot of things that have happened that have changed that are good, but there are a lot of things that have changed that haven't been such a positive thing either. And that's true in wrestling. I would, I'd like to tell younger people, to find experienced people to learn from, legitimate professionals to learn from, and try to learn everything you can about the business, regardless of what role you're trying to be in. I don't care if you're trying to wrestle or a referee or be an announcer or whatever. I think you need to know as much about it as you can. And that was the attitude I had when I got into the business. I knew that being a referee was going to be my get to way, but that was never going to be my only avenue in this business, or at least I didn't want it to be. And as it turns out, it led me to do a lot of different things in this business, whether it has to do with the creative side or the TV and training and just you name it. I've been able to touch a little bit of every aspect of it. And that's really what I wanted to do when I started. But I couldn't have done that without listening to the right people. And that's the best advice I can give. I wish I could tell you that things were the way they used to be, where it's just about being really good and you're going to make it. But things are different now. You don't have all the territories and opportunities that was out there once at one time, at least not on a high level. I mean, you can work in this business and on the weekends, and if you're happy with that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to make it to the big time, there's only 2 or 3 paths to get there now, and that's a shame. It's a shame that it's gotten to that point, I think, because I believe that wrestling really, the diversity of it back in those days was probably the most appealing part. You just don't have that now. And I think that's sad to some degree. And I think, and I'm thinking about what you said about your mother. I think she probably said that about her job too, that there's some restrictions there that probably she didn't have when she started. And that kind of keep people from being the best they could be sometimes, or getting as far as they could get. And it's a tough business. I can tell you that it's a tough business. But you have to listen. You have to apply what you learn, and you have to respect the people in front of you. And that's something I've always tried to do. And it's served me pretty well.
It served you pretty well indeed. There's no question about that. So James, while we wait on your next book to be published, in the meantime, why don't you let everybody know the best way they can grab your first book?
Well, I mean, you can still get it on Amazon. And I have a lot of people that contact me on Facebook that want it, and if they want it that way, that they can send me their information and pay and do it on PayPal, and I'll sign it and send it to you. In fact, I just did that today with one. So it's still available. After 10 years, I still get a lot of requests for it, especially from younger guys in the business. I think the referee chapter in there has gotten me a lot of gigs, as far as doing clinics and things, because it seems like it's kind of hit a nerve with a lot of people. And I wish things were the way they used to be, so that all those things that I talked about in that chapter were so today. But I still believe that's the way it should be. And I think that's the way it should be taught. So, I think a lot of people appreciate that.
The name of the book, folks, is The Third Man, My Life and Times Inside the Ring and Out. As James said, you can grab it on Amazon, or you can reach out to James personally, what have you. He'll make sure he gets you fixed up. Get yourself a copy of that book.
I should say too, we're talking about that book too. A lot of people think you write a book and it's all about you, but it's really not. It's about that book is mostly about the guys that I worked with, mostly in the Texas area, and my relationship with them, including the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and all those guys that were around in world class, Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez and Bruiser Brody. And I mean, just goes on and on and on. And my relationship with JBL, that started and that kind of thing. And so it's really about those guys and my a relationship with them. It's not about me so much, but this next one is going to be more about my experiences in Japan and the NWA and global, and a few more chapters about some guys that I worked with, like Eddie Gilbert and that. So it'll be a little bit different, a different take on this one.
Well, and folks, I want to let you know right now, I'm trying everything in my power, and he said he's thinking about it, but I'm trying everything in my power to get James Beard to start doing seminars online. I think that for all of you promotions around the world, and we cover you, I mean, all the way to China we cover, Australia we cover, for all you promotions around the world, you may not necessarily be able to get James over to where you're at that way, flying him out and all that good stuff. That's pretty difficult these days with the way the airline industry is. But if James could do it online, I think it would be crazy for you not to tap into this wealth of knowledge that he has about the wrestling industry, how to be a referee, how to be an executive, how to treat people with the proper type of respect, but also guidance so that they can move on and become the next Booker T, the next Jazz, the next JBL. Because these are all people that James Beard has touched and helped mentor and help guide. And that's just a small portion. That's a minuscule portion of the list, because it's far and wide. And even folks to this day, folks like Layla Gray and Luke Curtis have even been mentored by James and booked by James and what have you in recent years. I mean, so it's incredible when you think about all the lives that this man has touched. So if you could tap into James and have him do a seminar, even if it was online, I believe that would be worth it for everybody. So James, I'm going to stay on you about that. We'll see what we can do to make that happen.
Well, it's really been kind of a passion of mine to pass it along and kind of pay it forward. And that's if that's a way to do that and it's a viable way, then I'm more than willing to give that a shot too. I know that I'm always behind times when it comes to technology, but I've always enjoyed doing clinics and seminars, and I tell people when I do those things, I said, look, this is not a referee's clinic. This is a wrestling clinic. Referees just happen to be something that I was mostly known for, but and one of the first questions I ask guys when I do those clinics, I walk in there and I'll say, okay, how many guys in here are workers? And of course, all the wrestlers will raise their hand. And then some of the guys will be sitting there on their hands, and I'll say, well, what are you guys? They say, well, I'm a referee. And I'm going like, you're not a worker? And that's been one of my things to try to get across to these guys, is that a referee is part of a match, or should be, and you're a worker. You just have a different role, and those are the things that I try to convey to these guys so that they understand that wrestling is a team sport, and it's not an individual sport, and referee is part of that team. So, I try to include everything I can in these clinics that it's not just about refereeing. It's about wrestling and refereeing. As a guy who's trained a lot of people and worked in that end of it too, I think I can probably help the wrestlers just as much as I can the referees.
Well said. Well said. Anybody who wants to reach out to you personally, James, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, I mean, I like, me, I'm not a big social media guy. I do have the accounts on X and Instagram, but and the Facebook, but if somebody contacts me, like send me a message on Facebook, I'm always answering those. I don't ignore anybody. And even if I don't know you, I'll at least acknowledge it and find out, what it is you want. And if you're looking at something like this, then we'll definitely talk about it. And you can contact me through Texas Style Wrestling. That's another way to do that. Texas Style Wrestling. Okay, now we're talking there in Texas. Where is that promotion based? It's a Dallas promotion. And actually, we've been doing our tapings in Addison, which is just a little town right in Dallas, really, basically. And it's supposed to have been a kind of a studio type situation. I started working with these guys a few months ago, and Jazz and Rodney Mack are both a part of that. In fact, Jazz is the one that kind of recruited me to come into this, and they were looking for someone to help with the I guess the creative side of it, the angles and the formatting of the tapings and that sort of thing, and I've gotten more involved in that recently, and we're trying to get that back to I guess adhere to the name Texas Style Wrestling, which is kind of known for hard hitting, believable, real stuff. I mean, something that you can watch and you really realize that it looks like a competition. That's what we're shooting for, and we're getting there. We're getting a good crew together, and I think our TVs our matches are starting to show that, and of course with Jazz and Rodney and Tim Storm involved with me, and some other guys that I trust. We're gonna try to make that happen. TSWplus.com. Texas Style Wrestling, yes. James Beard, Rodney Mack, Jazz, Tim Storm, Jesus. Literally the who's who, especially down there in Texas, wrestling. My goodness. They're all my friends. They're my family. Not my friends, they're my family. Not just guest on the show, you're my family as well. And James, I just want to tell you, man, I love the fact that you continue to, I don't want to say reinvent yourself, but you continue to keep yourself topical. And it is a joy to watch that, because you're providing hope for everybody that, yeah, man, you can still do it. And all of the things that you do in life can matter if you allow yourself to continue to work together with others and, keep yourself ready when opportunity knocks. James, you're an inspiration, and I appreciate you, man. And I can't wait to see what's going to continue to happen, not only in 2024 but beyond. Well, it's been, like I said, it's been a fun ride and an interesting ride, and you're right. I think that first of all, you become adept and professional at what you do, and know whatever business you're in, if it's wrestling, and know everything you can about it. But on top of that, treat people the way you want to be treated, and try to be honest and as fair with people as you can be, and good things will happen for you if you do that, I think. And I've been very fortunate. I was talking to, I think it was John JBL. We were just sitting around, just having one of our jabber sessions, and I don't remember how the topic came up. But we got to talking about guys getting booked and how they got it booked and that kind of thing. And I sit there and realized at that moment, I've never asked for a booking or anything in this business. Not a single time. I didn't ask to get in the business. I just kind of was pushed into it and put into it, however you want to put it. And since that day, I have never asked for an opportunity. Not the Japanese thing, not a booking at the Sportatorium, not a booking anywhere I've ever been. It's just came, and I honestly believe it's come because I've tried to do things the right way. I've been very fortunate. Check out Liquid IV. Listen, it's the holiday season, folks, and you and I both know hydration is paramount. Okay, if you want to get through the shopping, if you want to get through visiting the family and friends, the sports and live events, come on. Got to make sure you stay hydrated, and there's no better way that I know of than Liquid IV.
okay, packed with B vitamins and all your other essential vitamins and nutrients there. Tastes great. You just take that hydration stick, you put it in a bottle of water, shake that sucker up, and enjoy. I'm telling you, shop better hydration today. In fact, if you visit liquidiv.com right now, you'll save 20% on your entire order by using the promo code Duke Loves Rasslin. That's right, Duke Loves Rasslin. No spaces, going to get you 20% off. What are you waiting for? liquidiv.com. Enjoy. And now, let's get on with the show. What a fun conversation there with the Hall of Famer, the legend himself, James Beard. And it's interesting. You go back to the beginning of that conversation there. I don't call them interviews, folks. They're conversations, especially with somebody like James, who is such a big friend of the show and a friend of mine personally, someone who has been here from the beginning and has assisted in the success of Duke Loves Rasslin. So that's not an interview. That's two friends having a conversation, catching up with each other. But it's funny, James with his awesome Texas Southern accent there, right? And then you have me, the Boston guy, with my, I'm not going to call it a Boston accent so much as a New England accent, because I actually pronounce my R's. So, so you may not immediately know I'm from Boston from the beginning, but you definitely know that I'm a Yankee, some kind of northerner, what have you here. But it's funny for me to correct James and say wrestling, not wrestling, wrestling. And James trying to, his media training, so he's trying to properly pronounce the word. It's wrestling. It was like, no, the name of the show is Duke Loves Rasslin. I could have edited that out, but I left that in because that was such a sweet, genuine moment amongst friends having a great intro to a deeper conversation there. And I said, you know what, let me let folks in on little pieces like that, because moments like that, and really the totality of the conversation that James and I had, it is so easy to understand in a very short amount of time. You don't have to listen to James Beard speak for long before you realize why people like Tim Storm, former NWA champion, multi-time champion, why Jazz, Rodney Mack, JBL, countless other people in the entire wrestling industry from all over the world, mind you. It is not difficult to understand why. Once they become acquainted with James Beard, he's a friend for life. And these folks hold on to James. You heard JBL on this show talk about what James Beard means to him and how important he was, especially when JBL was making the transition from Global Wrestling Federation to finally getting his shot with the WWF at the time. You've heard Rodney Mack and Jazz talk about James and how he was so helpful, especially not only in the beginning of their careers, but even to this day. You hear it. They still do business together, right? They still find ways to continue to work together. Tim Storm, who I got to get back on the show at some time soon. Tim Storm's another early guest. He put James way over as well. Just about how great of a friend James has always been to him. Dusty Wolf, Rudy Boy Gonzalez, who you heard in a previous episode when I had Dusty, Rudy, and James on at the same time. We were memorializing the Mad Dog there. But Rudy and James, their paths didn't always cross years ago. They kind of were missing each other, but they always knew of each other. And when they finally got acquainted with each other, that was it. Right? Friends for life. That's it. James Beard is a quality human being. Forget about referee, forget about executive, forget about wrestling mind, forget about movie consultant, forget about actor, forget about singer, musician, right? James Beard is a quality human being. And it's a different level when you're able to catch up with James. The quality of the conversation and how you feel just interacting with somebody like that. people talk about chicken soup for the soul. James Beard is chicken soup for the soul. He's a great person. Like, he's not a good person. He's not a nice person. He's a great person. And he wears that on his sleeves. And it's very easy to tell. And it's cool, man. It's cool. It's cool to have somebody like that and be able to call a person like that your friend, because legitimately, he's a friend. No question about it. And everyone says the same thing about him. So that must tell you something there, right? So tip my hat to the legend James Beard, who legitimately is living his best life, right? He ain't going back and forth with you humanoids. He's living his best life. Okay? James is doing it, man. The whole movie thing, he's about to put out his second book. He's definitely got a bunch of different opportunities in the form of bookings. And like I said, I'm trying to get James to start doing more web-based seminars so he can be even more available to people around the world. It just makes sense, and he has such an incredible take on wrestling as an industry. And he's able to not only help wrestlers, but help executives and help bookers, help people understand what pro wrestling is, what it should continue to be, and how you get there. And it's interesting because there's certainly a bunch of people who exist in the wrestling industry who could use a James Beard to kind of help them, get their head straight, for lack of a better term. And I'm gonna give my opinion on something, and it's probably gonna upset some people. And I want to give a disclaimer here: in no way, shape, or form should any heat about what I'm about to say befall James in any way. But in my opinion, the reason why AEW continues to be on pretty unsteady ground, and why they continue to just be a caricature of what they should be, considering all of the advantages that they have. They have an unlimited budget. They got billionaires that own it. They managed to land on TV in the United States of America, cable TV on networks that traditionally carry pro wrestling. They have built a following. Wrestlers want to work there. Those are advantages. Those are major hurdles that most companies cannot get over. AEW has managed to accomplish that, which is great. The problem is, clearly, you don't have someone like James Beard available who can get through to the number one guy, Tony Khan, the president of the company, and help him understand that literally every single thing that he's doing right now is completely counter to sustaining and really growing that company. Everything that he's doing right now is going to have an adverse effect. And we see it happening, right? We can go down the list of just blunders, man, that get in the way of other positive things, right? It's a positive thing that they were able right out of the gate to be an alternative to the WWE in terms of a place where not only fans can watch different wrestling and see some recognizable stars and some young stars blended in, but also the wrestlers had a place where they could make some very good money and be on television, and be on television that's distributed far and wide, right? Those are advantages. Now, the disadvantage is when you have a guy who clearly doesn't understand that you have to modernize, right? A lot of the stuff you see in AEW is just stubborn booking. I plan on making so-and-so the champion, and we're going to stick with that. And we're not going to pay attention to the ebbs and the flows and what's working, what's not working. We're just going to make so-and-so champion and stick with that. It's nonsense. MJF, should he have eventually been champion? Sure. Should he have been champion as long as he has been? Absolutely not. Because you had nobody to feed MJF to elevate him. You had a bunch of tomato cans. No disrespect to anybody, but you guys weren't built in a manner that could make MJF's title reign mean anything. And even though that's an old school concept on how to book in pro wrestling, but still you got to modernize. Where are the giants who put MJF in trouble? Where are the various people of color who put MJF in trouble? Right? He doesn't need a partner. He doesn't need a faction. He should be getting beaten up by factions and partners and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that just completely ruin that title reign. But hey, it happened to Adam Page. Hangman Page did the same thing. His title reign was so forgettable. If you ask most people to name the AEW champions, they usually miss Adam Page. They skip over him. They forgot that he was champion. Kenny Omega, who's supposed to be like the best wrestler in the world, according to a lot of people, his title reign wasn't much either. The most significant thing that happened in his title reign is that he and Tony Khan went to Impact Wrestling and buried that company, completely buried them to the point where they had to rebrand and go back to their old name because they're still trying to dig out of what they did to them. The fact that you're still only booking one women's match per television episode when you have a society in 2024 where we're talking about the pay gap between men and women and that's shrinking. We're talking about the education and how women are literally leading in college graduates all over the damn nation. You got countries around the world, women are literally their prime ministers, their queens, they're in charge. Right? And you're still taking a whole bunch of talent and you're making it so they can only get one match per week on your television show. Meanwhile, you're featuring a bunch of guys who never were and never will be. Why? Why are we doing this? When you watch a show that James Beard's involved in, it looks a lot different. It looks competitive. It looks rough and tough. The storylines are pretty simple to understand. It's entertaining. There are people in AEW who Tony Khan has access to, who are veterans, who know what they're talking about, and who have a lot of success and what have you. But he ain't listening to them, clearly. I think a guy like James Beard is somebody who can get through to Tony. I really do. I have a theory. I think Tony Khan, like a lot of people of this generation, and again, I might offend some people by saying this, you don't want somebody who knows better than you. It's not even talking about older. You don't want somebody with more experience letting you know that what you're doing is not the way to go. You immediately take that personally. You immediately take offense to that, and you want to go the other way, right? When you listen to what some people talk about in terms of Jim Ross is a great example where here's a guy, and look, I got my problems with Jim Ross. I'm not always the biggest fan, but I respect what he's accomplished, and Jim Ross definitely knows the wrestling industry, and he's proven that he knows the wrestling industry. He doesn't know everything. He could stand to modernize to a certain degree, but Jim Ross has forgotten a lot about wrestling than most of us will ever know. So let's just make sure we're clear on that. Jim Ross says he doesn't understand the whole Orange Cassidy thing. Doesn't make sense. Long term, this ain't going to work. Tony Khan pushes Orange Cassidy to the point where this guy legitimately is the most protected person in the company. And it's ridiculous because my question to that is, how the hell are you going to get a new TV contract? How the hell are you going to get fans to tune in? How the hell are you going to sell tickets when your most protected wrestler is Orange Cassidy? And no disrespect to the wrestler himself, hardworking guy. I give him all the credit in the world. You have maximized all of your abilities. You're literally outperforming what you should be at this point, right? So kudos to you, Orange. But brother, you are not a top guy, and you're not going to be a top guy, even if they put you in the main event. The fans have already proven they're not tuning in when you're wrestling. They're not when you're on the card, they're not buying extra tickets to come see you. And partially that's because of the way you've been booked. Because it's unbelievable that Orange Cassidy would literally be this superhuman person who can beat everybody. It's embarrassing. And if you're going to do that, then just go all the way and make him the champion, right? If it's going to be a joke like that, then let's just go all the way with the joke. Let's make it so ridiculous that at least people will tune in to watch the guy eventually get destroyed by somebody, right? That could make sense. It's just, it defies logic, some of this stuff. And on top of that, you got Tony Khan jumping online and acting like a crazy fanboy. Upset when people are calling him out. As if you're not the guy who said that you welcome the criticism. And listen, Tony Khan's been in my inbox talking crazy. You guys know that. So there's nothing new here. This is who he is. But it's embarrassing. How the hell do you find the time to do it? You should be working on a new TV deal, Tony. Your company still is not profitable. You should be sitting down in under the learning tree of some of those veterans you got in that company, or at least bringing a guy like James Beard and learn something. You got so much talent in that company. I would take a guy like Will Hobbs right now and just have him break Orange Cassidy in half. Get that belt off of Orange Cassidy immediately. And then you could retell the Orange Cassidy story where he's going to try to work from behind and make it back to the top. Good for him. But you got to get Will Hobbs hot so that he could eventually challenge for the world championship. Right? Samoa Joe is the current champion now. How long is that going to last? The guy gets injured every other year. Right? How long is that going to last? No disrespect to Samoa Joe. But does that even make sense? That's the best you could come up with. Come on, guys. Come on. You got Edge and Christian that they're just wrestling each other. That's just and I get that may be what the wrestlers want to do, but I'm sorry. Adam Copeland, you should be wrestling some of these young guys in a real feud instead of feuding with friggin' Christian, your buddy. And by the way, no one wants to see you guys wrestle each other. They want to see you wrestle together against other people. How many more matches do you think Adam Copeland has in that body of his? We're wasting it on a feud with Christian? That, quite frankly, as impressive as the vignettes and the way that Christian is cutting his promos have been, this ain't working. This isn't translating into anything that's helping business. Why are we doing it? It's like, I'll tell you. A guy like James Beard, if you actually listen to him, he could correct a lot of this nonsense. Just in terms of explaining to you, buddy, this is not the way you do pro wrestling. It's not going to work. It's not working. You can spend as much money as you want. That's not a successful wrestling company because you're not making money at the end of the day. Your bills are higher than what you're bringing in. It is what it is. And if I'm a TV company, there's nothing going on in AEW right now that would make me want to continue to invest or put them on my airwaves. There's nothing going on. Why would I invest in a company where their biggest black star, Jade Cargill, she immediately, as soon as she left that company, she did an interview in which she said she left the company because she wants to inspire young black and brown kids, and she did not feel she could do that in AEW. She said she wanted to wrestle the best women in the company at the top of the card, and she does not understand why she wasn't allowed to do that. She wanted to be in the world title hunt, not this made-up TBS title that you threw on her because the network told you, hey, what's all this chatter about racism in your company? Huh? we need a black champion. We need a champion of color. So you made up a belt and you threw it on Jade and then disrespected her by never having her and Britt Baker ever touch each other, by never giving her a world title shot. She left the company because of that. Talked about the glass ceiling in that company. What television network is going to invest in you after that? They're going to look at you like there's something wrong with you. And the worst part is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. People talk about Swerve and how he's being quote unquote pushed. But the last time I checked, losing 2 straight matches to Jon Moxley, that's not a push. Telling him that he's going to go back and feud with Keith Lee, that's not a push. Having a competitive match with Dustin Rhodes at this stage in Dustin Rhodes' career, that's not a push. You're slowing the man down. Orange Cassidy, now that's a push. That's a hell of a push that Orange Cassidy got going on. Eddie Kingston, he's got a push. Right? Samoa Joe got a push. Now he's champion. Those are pushes. I don't know what this thing with Swerve is. And look, I'm not a fan of Swerve. He's a talented guy. But I still think that if you're going to invest in anybody, especially a wrestler of color, at this stage, in order to make a statement, if you're going to put the company on anybody's back, put it on Will Hobbs' back. Muscled up, rough and tough, looks like he can beat everybody up. I don't have to suspend disbelief in order to understand if that guy just goes in, destroys everybody, he's champion. It makes sense. He's Brock Lesnar. You look at Brock Lesnar, there's no reason why anyone should beat Brock Lesnar unless they're almost somebody that big, right? If somebody gets a win over Brock Lesnar like Cody Rhodes did, it's because he literally had to run him over with a truck. Because that's the only way you're going to stop a Brock Lesnar. That should be Will Hobbs. And the fact that it's not defies logic. Doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, in WWE, they just put the North American title on this Obafemi guy who came out of nowhere, by the way, Nigerian. He was a shot put champion in college, just built rough and tough and just huge. The guy is massive. And you look at him and come on. There may be 2 or 3 people in the entire wrestling world who you would believe could beat Omofemi in a fight. Right? There aren't too many people walking the face of the earth where you look at them and you say, oh, yeah, he could beat up Omofemi. Oh, the guy just looks like somebody who can hurt somebody. He actually looks like Francis Ngannou to a certain degree, but he's much more thick than Francis. Francis is more cut. But you get my point in terms of the presentation. He just looks like a destroyer of worlds. So, of course, you put a title on that guy right away. You give him like a Goldberg push, which is what they did. He comes in, has a couple of matches. Immediately, you give him one of the titles. Now he's rising up the ranks, baby. That kid will be an NXT champion before the year is over, unless he's already on the main roster beating the hell out of Cody Rhodes, which I am advocating for. I would love to see Obafemi destroy Cody Rhodes, put him in real danger, and have Cody have to figure that out. That's wrestling. It's simple. Big, bad, nasty, badass guy. You can book him as a heel, but the fans are probably going to cheer him because he looks like a legitimate fighter, a legitimate destroyer of worlds. Brock Lesnar. It doesn't matter what Brock Lesnar does as a heel. The fans are going to cheer him because they know that guy can really fight. Same thing with Bobby Lashley. You look at Bobby Lashley, you know he can legitimately kick everybody's ass. Because of that, it doesn't matter what you book him to do as a heel. They're going to cheer Bobby Lashley because at the end of the day, who doesn't like the baddest dude in the room? You may fear him. You may not like the fact that he can kick your ass, but it's still pretty damn cool. And because it's still pretty damn cool, especially when he's kicking somebody's ass, you can't turn away from it. You want to see it. Mike Tyson 101. Right? I don't get why it's so difficult for Tony Khan to understand the basic principles of booking pro wrestling. It is ridiculous. We got a lot of friends in that company. That company is putting food on their table, and thank goodness for it. And Tony, I tip my hat to you. People, they got the lights on because they're able to work for you. Some of those folks, they never even had a shot at WWE. So the fact that you came along was a big deal because some of the other companies out there, like the NWA, for example, they don't pay well. MLW does not pay well. We got more wrestlers complaining about what they're getting paid in the crappy contracts that they get from MLW. They don't pay well. Impact Wrestling, Mitz and Matz, right? They're kind of in the middle. I hear they're getting better. AEW has a place. They matter. Don't get me wrong here. They matter. We need them. But Jesus, Tony, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it all. You're not going to get the TV contract with the way you're carrying on. You need somebody like a James Beard, and you need to listen to them. Buddy, that's not how you book pro wrestling, what you're doing right there. Doesn't make any sense. You don't take the 5'8" guy in the big boots who's cussing at everybody and throwing drinks on kids and really thinking that TV networks are going to want to invest in that. You don't do storylines where you got guys throwing quarters at him, hitting him with quarters and making fun of his Jewish heritage and thinking, oh, yeah, that's the thing that's going to work. What a fail that was. What the hell? Who's on first here? I'm telling you, man. Just boggles my mind. People get nervous when we talk like this because the idea is, well, hey man, if you point out the problems and you complain so much, that means that you're not really loving wrestling. That means that you're kind of hating wrestling, and that could do damage. No. You identify what's wrong and you hold them accountable and you tell them to fix it. WWE was never perfect. A lot of the mistakes that Tony Khan is making, WWE have made them a million times over. But we stay on their backside. And they got the right people in place today. And thank God that, with Endeavor owning them and TKO, it's a totally different company. But they buy into the modern era of how to conduct business. Women, people of color, celebrate heritage. Don't poke fun at different cultures. Make cultures matter. Right? It's interesting. WWF, when Bruno Sammartino was champion, it mattered that he was Italian. They didn't poke fun at his Italian heritage. They enhanced it. It mattered. Pedro Morales, right? Puerto Rican. It mattered. And then they started going in the wrong direction with some of those stupid gimmicks. In the modern day, with a guy like Obafemi can be Nigerian and you're not making him a caricature, he's just a badass, that's the way it should be. Tony Khan, there's no reason why you can't do it. Hell, you might even be able to do it even better, some of the talent you have in AEW. But it's not going to work out until you start listening to people who know far better than you ever could imagine to know. Getting off my soapbox there. Duke Loves Rasslin on Facebook, on Twitter. DukeLovesRasslin@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Hey, look, if I don't say these things, then I'm complicit. And I refuse to be complicit in the nonsense. Duke loves wrestling. And in order to express the love and to make sure that I'm contributing to the solution, I got to call out the nonsense. Can't just sit here and pretend like it's all rainbows and lollipops. No, got to call out the nonsense. And you offer solutions. A guy like James Beard is a solution to the nonsense. You hear the guy talk, you know it. Read his book, Third Man. Great book. Anyway, I got to get out of here. As always, folks, be kind to yourselves and be kind to others. This guy gets a lot of heat for being the voice at the end of my show every week. And I leave it up there because I just think it's hilarious. So without further ado, take it away, Tony Schiavone.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Rasslin.